at the broader politics for a second, we still have a whole politics that's dominated by what Occupy might call the 1%. The people who are in those weekend parties with the media owners, with the bankers, with the financiers, with the big industrialists, with the multinational companies. And we still have a media that's spreading hideous bile. We've heard about the sort of bile that they're spreading about trans people, a whole lot of minority groups. And particularly, I think we should focus on the bile about benefit recipients. Now, maybe some of you, for professional reasons at least, read the Daily Mail. Unfortunately, I have to for professional reasons. And you'll be reading quite often about these families with 10 children or more on out-of-work benefits. What you might not know is I looked up the figures on this. There is around about 100 families in the whole of Britain that fit that criteria. And if you read the Daily Mail, you know practically all of them by name. And what lots of people reading the Mail less critically, no doubt, than you do, think is that is your typical benefit recipient. And that is one sign of the kind of damage that the media we have now does to our politics, to our political debate. And it's largely unchallenged. And we have to challenge it. Of course, one of the other things that we know that's still the case about politics is that we have lobbyists having huge strongholds over our political system. One of the areas in which I have a great deal of regular concern is the oil and gas industry lobbyists. And I quite often find myself debating Peter Lilly, who happens to be both an MP and a director of an Azerbaijani oil company. And of course, as we found from our media, the Sunday papers in recent weeks, he's not the only one where both the lobbyist and the politician turn out to be the same person, all too many of them. And that brings me to the broader point that I want to make too, which is that actually, whilst we focus on all those problems, we also need to focus on and look how we can encourage the good bits of our current media. Because we wouldn't know a lot about that lobbying without the kind of exposés that even some of the media that's got lots of problems attached to it is prepared to do. The free media is terribly important. It's an important part of our democracy, and we need to make it so much stronger and better. And the other thing, I was just this evening writing something to a wonderful website called the Dorset Eye. Now, I was down in Dorset recently at the launch of the Living Wage campaign down there, and the coverage that mostly came of that came from the Dorset Eye. If you look at lots of things that are happening right across Dorset, most of them are covered in the Dorset Eye. They're often not covered in the local papers. Closer to where we're sitting now, many of you might know about the group collectively known as the Barnet Bloggers, who did a huge amount to expose the dreadful Brian Coleman, who's just been expelled from the Tory party. And it was the bloggers, the independent media, the people, the citizens journalists, who really created the situation that made that happen. So what we need to do is not despair. It can be very easy to think, God, it's 9 months after Leveson, there's just lots of rowing around this whole idea of a royal charter and nothing's happened. But we have to fight on. It's absolutely critical for our democracy that we do fight on. And what we need to do is push, I think, the whole royal charter debate has just disappeared into the mud. I think we should go back to Leveson and say, okay, he's not infallible, he's not perfect, he was pretty crap on ownership, but he did a reasonable job of independent oversight. And let's go back to the Leveson model of independent oversight. It's not exactly what I'd personally choose either, but we have there an authoritative figure, an independent figure who said, let's do this. Let's go back to that and try and start on that again. And that's one of the things I think we should do. And of course, what we need to do is tackle the whole ownership question. I was actually with some people in this room at a meeting in Bournemouth on a different occasion. I've been to Bournemouth a lot lately. And at that meeting, I met a new word. It's almost unpronounceable, but I think it's very evocative. The Berlusconiisation of the media of Europe. And I think that just sums it up beautifully where we are now in terms of ownership and what we need to get away from. Now, I agree with Harriet Harman, and that's not something I say terribly often, but 15% ownership cap, I think, would be absolutely a brilliant place to start negotiations. And she's proposing cross-party talks on that. And I think there might just be a little window where there might be some hope for making that happen. Let's face it, David Cameron may not be feeling very good about the place that he's sitting, with regard to Rupert Murdoch at the moment. Rupert does seem to like Boris rather a lot. And maybe there's a real little window here where we can get some splits happening, make things happen, start to talk about something that I'm sure would be immensely popular with the public, which is ownership controls. Because although the public, as other speakers have said, are not very aware of how it all links together, I think there is out there a general sense of we're really not being told the truth. We don't know what to believe, we're not sure where to go, but there's something missing here. And I think there's a real sense of that. And on the much broader issue of the state of our economy and society, people are saying the current model isn't working, but no one we're hearing from in the mainstream media is saying anything differently. So there's a real hunger out there, and we need to say to people, say to the public, media reform is one of the ways you're going to start to hear different answers. So there's that. I'd also like to very briefly mention an idea which I think is an excellent one, which is the Dorset Eye, media like that, the Barnet bloggers. We need to find a way to help fund a lot more of that kind of journalism. And I think the idea of some kind of tax, perhaps on online adverts, as a way of having a public service model like the licence fee to fund independent journalism, that's a really excellent idea. The idea that independent news sources could be charities. They're going to do lots of controversial things. The Charity Commission will have a fit. But that would be a really good public service. But above all, what we absolutely must say is that good quality independent journalism is absolutely essential for our democracy. Now, if you look at the turnout in elections these days, you look at the state of the public's view of their MPs, we have a big problem with our democracy. And one of the things we need to do is fix our media and our press to fix our democracy. Thank you.